Hi, and welcome back to our weekly market update, Morton Brown Family Wealth. I'm Dennis Morton here with Katie Brown and Cody Demmel. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Dennis. Great. How are
Good.
you?
Good. So we were talking today about climbing the speculative ladder. We're going to start by talking about ways that investors are engaging with their finances in different ways. Some of them are showing up in bank results. Some of it's showing up in even more speculative endeavors like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So, Katie, you want to start us off with the conversation about Schwab bank earnings and how people are using trading to drive bank revenue.
Yes, it was a very strong year. A lot of banks, fourth quarter results. There was Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, their banking division and their accounts. Charles Schwab, they all had very, very strong earnings in the fourth quarter, beating expectations, and much of it cited as being through transactions. A lot of transactions last year, and some of their lending arms also doing well. It's fascinating because we've had a lot of conversation, and it's true that the transaction cost, the physical cost that people see when they buy and sell investments has come down significantly. And many places are going to, zero commission trades, but the custodians still need to make money. And so they are making money still in the transactions. I don't know if Cody, you want to chime in on that a little bit.
We were just looking at some of the trading revenues of the different firms and how they had all-time revenue from trading while they still have zero commission trades. So we were wondering how they were doing that. And they're taking some profits from the bid and ask spread. So when you sell a stock, there's a bid and an ask, and their margin there is a little bigger. So that's how they're able to make a little more revenue with all the trading that we've had this year.
Yeah, and you see just the overall engagement of people who are already active on the platform. But then for Schwab to add over 15 million new clients in the fourth quarter, over 14 million new brokerage accounts, those are astronomical numbers. So you get the sense that we talk about the fear of missing out, people engaging in their financial pictures in a unique way.
Yeah. Now, much of that, of course, is from the TD Ameritrade acquisition, but still, there was a lot of new clients still, flocking to the platform. Yeah.
Right.
And trading for a lot of good reason last year too. I mean, even within our client portfolios, I know we did a lot of tax loss trading earlier in the year, a little bit of rebalancing, trying to be really thoughtful in the transactions taking place. And I think really positioning the portfolios very well. So it did, in a lot of respects, it kind of ended up being a win-win around the table.
So today is also inauguration day. So we're going to get into the first 100 days of a new administration. And one area that people have been racing to is alternative energy. Cody, you found a piece in Reuters about just what's been happening as people flood into something that might get supported by new policy initiatives.
Yeah. So Joe Biden and their administration put out some plans over the summer when they were running about a $2 trillion climate change. And the inflows that we've seen into some of the alternative energy flows has just been massive. Going into 2019, there was around $1 billion in alternative energy. Last year alone, they added 17 billion in new flows. And so far this year, there's been another $5 billion in new flows into alternative energy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that jumps out at me with this, and it's something that applies to all exchange traded funds, and there are lots of them out there. There are more ETFs than there are stocks right now, is that everyone's constructed a little bit differently. And anytime we get into definitions of clean energy or socially responsible investing, each fund company is going to have a different definition for that. So whether you're looking at the iShares Global Clean Energy ETF or the Invesco Clean Energy ETF, they're all kind of composed differently. So I think if you're trying to invest in this, it pays to look under the hood a little bit and see what it is that you're owning, and if it fits your definition of what clean energy or sustainable investing is. What did you see? What did you see in this one, Katie?
You always get a little bit nervous when you see such a quick run up and you see people locking into a particular idea. But at the same time, to balance that out with energy sources are still, when you think of solar or the wind turbines, they're still only providing just a fraction of the energy in this country, and even lower compared to many other parts of the world. And so to have initiatives out there to say, we want to make this a leading energy source within the next decade or two it's aggressive, but it's also, I think we're headed in that direction. So not to be ignored. by any means. I think a lot of the run up is substantiated, I guess, is the bottom line.
It's a good point, and it's a good point you bring up the run up too, because if you're going to start investing today, you're buying at where it's run up to. With any kind of investing, especially if you're basing on policy decisions, you have to decide, okay, is the news baked into today's price? Because you're buying it today and then expecting it to go up from there. Sometimes there'll be the run up and buy in and expect more of it, but then if it doesn't meet expectations or exceed expectations, then we have issues from an investor perspective. So we're going to make one prediction and one prediction only for 2021, and that is there will be a bull market in Bitcoin explanations. And here's our contribution. So we're going to talk a little bit.
Somebody missed that. Explanations. Let's emphasize that. Okay.
Yeah. What is cryptocurrency, blockchain? So I was wanted to introduce this topic. We'd love to do a deeper dive on this sometimes because I think it is an important thing to start understanding. But the fundamentals of it are Bitcoin is one of many cryptocurrencies, but it was the original, created in 2008 as a means of storing and exchanging value. So that's why it's a cryptocurrency. There's a limited number of Bitcoin out there in the world, and there only ever will be a limited number, creating some of that scarcity that's driven prices up. So just to give you an idea of how speculative Bitcoin has been and how lucrative it's been recently, as of last September, all the cryptocurrencies in the world had a market cap of $350 billion. Since September 30th, Bitcoin alone is up almost 250%. Just a crazy run up. So there's a lot of elements to this, but the two things that we think are most important to understand is there's the currency, Bitcoin or any number of other coins, but then there's also the blockchain ledger or tracking system that is the underpinning of how it works, how transactions are registered, how ownership is tracked, both anonymously and in a way that's very secure. One of the things that we want to ask is if you're thinking about investing in Bitcoin, are you investing in it for its purpose, which is to store value, to protect against inflation, just as a means of making sure you have a secure means of transaction? Or are you buying the speculative asset because you want it to go up another 250%? Because those are two very different reasons. Cody, what did you get out of some of the Bitcoin articles that we've been looking through recently?
It is really interesting because obviously we had that large run up in 2018, then we had a drop off. And then obviously in 2020, we've had a run up again. I think the main difference this time compared to before is a lot of institutional investors are getting involved because they do see a use for it. And like Dennis said, I mean, they're not exactly sure what that use is in the future. So it is a really interesting topic.
There's no centralized control of the blockchain. It's something that's kind of managed by its participants. So imagine you're in a country where you might have the rule of law. You may be concerned about confiscation or having your assets clearly owned by you. This might be a very interesting way to make sure that you've maintained your wealth in a place where a government can't confiscate it and take it. Katie, what did you see in here? What's been your observations on Bitcoin so far?
I think the whole discussion around is it a currency or is it an asset is really fascinating. It was designed as a currency, but you're right, because of the scarcity of it, because of the friction in using it as an actual currency. If you buy something online, you buy something somewhere, usually the transaction costs in doing that when you're using credit cards is nil, depending on what it is, maybe something very small. But the cost in actually exchanging Bitcoin has been all over the place and it moves. So right now it's somewhere around $6 per transaction. So as an investment, fairly cheap. But if you're trying to buy a pizza and you have to pay $6 for the transaction cost, how much have you just added to your expense? And it's slower to process and slower to transact. And you don't have to use it as a currency. We have our dollars, we have our credit cards, we have our other means of currency. And so to think of it as a currency, I think is a bit of a challenge. I think it is more of a speculative asset and really needs to stay in that speculative category while it's very difficult to value. It's difficult to kind of pin down and regulate because it is so point to point.
Which is one of its advantages, that murkiness is actually, there's a darker side to it where sometimes you don't always know what it's being used to transact in. So there's the illegal, more nefarious side too. Right. But I also think that there's the practical challenges of using it, but then there's how people are using it, which they tend to hoard it. There's more Bitcoin being used to buy and sell Bitcoin than there is to buy and sell those things. And so there's just, I think people are saying, I want to get into this because eventually I'm going to sell it to the next person coming along for 10% more, 20% more than I bought it for.
What was that? The first quarter of 2019, less than 2% of all Bitcoin transactions were actually with merchants.
Yeah.
Actually for the exchange of some sort of goods or service. It was almost all buying and selling in between investors. And that's another reason why I kind of think of it more as a speculative asset versus an actual currency at this stage of the game.
In the CFA societies, they said it's like thinking about sitting in the early 1990s and thinking about what the internet is going to do to our lives. So it's one thing to think of, okay, I can go online and chat with people, which was enough of a phenomenon in the mid 90s. But to think of what Prime is now or what Netflix is now, all those things, there's so much. And blockchain technology is really what's going to drive that. So who knows what Bitcoin is worth, but blockchain technology and the means of having a decentralized ledger to monitor transactions, it could change the way banks and asset custodians like Charles Schwab work. It could remove some of the need for those intermediaries. It could create that digital scarcity and property rights. So you talk about what do I own and how do I prove that I own it? And lastly, it could create programmable money. So think about money that has rules for when it gets applied. Think about a contract, like you will receive this money when these conditions are met, or a trust that has certain conditions to be met. Could money potentially be programmed and released based on that, removing that need for an intermediary, like a trustee? So lots of stuff that when you think about the ripple effects, yet to be seen. All right, we're going to wrap up with the NFL. We have our Super Bowl picks for who's going to win the AFC and NFC championship games this week. Cody, I'll let you lead off.
All right. Hopefully Patrick Mahomes is healthy and he's able to play. If so, I think the Chiefs will probably win it all. It'll probably be Chiefs versus Packers.
Excellent.
And I think the Chiefs win it all as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy.
Chiefs versus Packers. Okay, Katie, how about you?
Well, since I'm so in tune with what's been going on, if I could vote for the Bears, I would. But I guess since that's not a possibility, let's go to the Midwest and go Packers.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So I'm rooting for the Bills. I'm a Ravens fan. After the Bills beat the Ravens last week, I loved what happened. The Ravens quarterback was knocked out of the game in the fourth quarter, Lamar Jackson. After the game, the Bills Mafia, their cohort of fans, donated over $300,000 to Lamar Jackson's favorite charity in Louisville. When he was at Louisville. So I just loved that idea of kind of crowdfunding and coming together for a charitable cause. So the Bills, got my heart. So I'm going to stick with them. And if they beat Tom Brady, I'm sure that's going to feel really nice in Buffalo. That'll warm some hearts. Let us know if there's anything that you would like to hear us talk about in the future. We hope this was a helpful exploration of speculation today, and we look forward to catching up with you soon.